All right, good evening and welcome to this June 15th special edition of the Amelia Village Council meeting. This time I'm going to ask the fiscal officer for a roll call.
Derek Campbell. Here. Todd Hart. Here. Renee Gerber.
Here.
Bob Pollock. Here. Tim Rosser.
Here.
Chuck Thacker.
Here.
And Mayor Ellington.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, good evening and welcome. I'd like to thank all of those present here this evening for taking the time and being interested enough to be here this evening and participate in your local government. The purpose of this special meeting is to discuss, explore, and ask and answer questions regarding how police services are delivered within the village of Amelia. We have with us this evening a few guests of council. We'll open the floor first to Claremont County Sheriff A.J. Rodenberg. Sheriff, would you like to address council?
Good evening. Yes, sir. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure being here. I know you've had some previous discussions with my chief deputy who's with me tonight as well, Rick Combs. I want to let you all know that we're in the policing business, obviously. We are not looking to compete with any other law enforcement agencies in this county. We never have and never will. There's plenty of work to go around for everybody. Each jurisdiction has to decide what type of policing services they want, and no two jurisdictions are alike. In this county, some want a certain type and a certain level, and it runs the gamut. So that depends on the jurisdiction involved. I'm proud to be the sheriff. I'm in my 15th year. I think we do an excellent job in the sheriff's office. We have a number of contracts throughout the county with various townships and villages and what have you, and what I would suggest you do, if you haven't already, is check in with some of these officials, township trustees, village council, for example, down in Moscow, and see how it's working for them. I inherited quite a few of them when I came into office 15 years ago. There were already some in place, but we've added several since I've been sheriff. We don't go out again soliciting business. This has all been at the request of various townships and villages. We have had other people approach us for the possibility of this over the past 15 years, and it's never materialized for whatever reason. We've never gotten started. But for every one of these we have in place, I can say this, and Rick can answer any specific questions you might have. We have never had any complaints of any significance regarding the delivery of our service. Our contractual obligations we take very seriously. Again, we have them in several places throughout the county, and the complaints we get are virtually nil. And none of them, and I'm very proud to say this in the sheriff's office generally, not just for a contract, our deputies are extremely professional. And I know a number of your officers, they're professionals. But there are law enforcement officers, unfortunately, in society today, in Amelia, and necessarily Claremont County, that are not professional. But I'm proud to say in the sheriff's office, none of our deputies have ever disgraced us or done anything to, if you will, tarnish the badge. And they do deliver quality services, not only under the contracts we have with some townships in the village, but the general deputies as well. So we'll be willing to answer any questions you might have, and we'll go from there. And of course, if after this evening you have any other questions, any of the citizens here have any questions, I'm an elected official, as you know. I believe in accessibility, and my chief deputy, Rick Combs, is more of the detailed man. He can provide a lot of the numbers that I can't keep in my head because there's only so much room up there. But as an elected official, I am willing to take calls from anyone at any time, scheduling permitting, of course, and I will not hide from that. So anything you might have to ask us tonight, we'll try to answer, and if we can't, we'll get the information and get back to you. Thank you very much, sir.
Does any council member have any specific questions for Sheriff Rodenberg at this time?
Did you present any of the questions?
Questions I presented to Chief Deputy Combs. So I know you were the person I got some questions from.
He passed them on to me too,
Oh,
Mayor,
did
so
you?
we both have them, but if there's anything involving detail, I might defer to Rick, because he can answer a lot of them, because he pretty much oversees these contracts in other places. The details of the day-by-day operations, he's got lieutenants and sergeants as well, but we'll answer them the best way.
Derek, would you like to address Chief Deputy Combs regarding your questions?
I would. I believe you might have received an email already.
I did.
Okay. I guess one of the first things that I saw in the contract was the setup charges. What if we experienced, if we did elect to go this way, a high turnover rate? Would we be charged the $4,000 each time that position turned over?
You're talking about uniforms and supplies on the start.
Correct.
No, you would not, because if there was any turnover, you weren't happy with an officer, or I wasn't happy with an officer, we would be replacing them from someone already in the service, and that cost had already been covered. So we recovered it one time. The only way you would have to cover it again is if you added to it.
An additional officer.
Additional officer, right?
And then one thing that I read in our chief's report was the communications issue. Have we worked through any of that yet?
Kevin, have you had an opportunity to hear back from a representative of the Sheriff's Office on?
I've only gotten, of the 5 calls I've made, only one person's responded.
So we don't have any hard numbers at this point.
Let me say something about that.
Yes, sir.
The Sheriff's Office in Claremont County does not run the communication center. That's under the, it used to be there. I don't know what happened, something with Sheriff Van Camp and the commissioners years ago before I got there. It's now under the umbrella of the county commissioners. So, sir, I apologize for, I don't know who you called, but it was probably someone at the comm center, I would guess, because we don't administer any of that as far as the fees and the charges. But your communications would no longer be with Union Township, of course. You would go through the Claremont County Communication Center, which again is not part of our office. And Rick, what about the fees? What can you say about the fees they would be charged for?
Well, currently, the commissioners, all contracting agencies with our office are not assessed fees. That's the current policy. And if you'd like to talk to someone at the communication center about the changeovers and all that kind of business that's technical, I'd suggest you call John Kiskaden at 732-7777. He is pretty much the communications director on a
Kiskaden?
Kiskaden.
And it would surprise me if he wouldn't call you back. He's been an excellent
Yeah.
addition to the comm center. He came from Union Township. He was the director of their communications, worked up there for years, and John is extremely helpful, and he's done a lot since he's been there, what, about a year or so now?
About 14, 15 months now, I think somebody said. Yeah.
So he's the man to talk to.
Is that the name that we had?
I can't remember offhand.
Just to clarify for those who are present, there would be no fee for communications with the Claremont County Sheriff's Department. However, that would leave an area of concern for how fire and EMS runs are dispatched. Currently, Amelia Village has a contract for dispatch services through Union Township. So it would create a public safety and officer safety concern and a lot of confusion with regard to where calls were being dispatched from. So that's something that would need to be worked on. You want to continue there, Derek?
Have we contacted Union Township just to ask about the dispatch contract and things?
No.
Okay. I guess another question I had was, I know that they are union members, and do they have the ability, and is it legal for them to strike at any time?
It is not legal for them to strike.
And I might add, too, this might be odd coming from management, but I'm very supportive of our union. That upsets some people maybe that are in the management side of the equation, but we have a very good working relationship with our union. We always have. We've had open lines of communication. I'm one person who believes in society. I think unions serve a valuable purpose in some areas, and we've never had any problems or glitches in our operations because of our union. I give Rick a lot of credit for that. We have to negotiate contracts with them. We sit down at the table with them for various things, working conditions, hours even, and that has worked very smoothly over the years, and we've had very few union grievances filed against us by any of our officers or deputies since I've been sheriff. So that is pretty much a seamless thing. But in Ohio, law, as Rick mentioned, it's absolutely illegal for them to strike. If they would do that, they would be summarily dismissed. It's not permitted in public safety.
Okay. Also, in the preliminary information, you submitted that during times when contract deputies are not working, headquarter deputies would provide coverage. Kind of, we know that there was a 3-day event,
Yeah,
and I just wanted to see how that overlapped each other.
Currently, how our contracts work is by design. Anytime a deputy is away from his station for training or vacation, that's just eaten up and off the book. In other words, we don't put anybody in there, cover it. We cover it with what we call headquarters deputies. In a village or a city, you'd have to backfill it by using a different means, but in our organization, we use headquarters deputies. Every 60 days or so, we look at our schedule, we make deployments, we try to schedule enough people based on the calls and workload per hour of the day. So in other words, we have a lot of different schedules that we operate to bring services during the high peaks. But on sick leave, if they're sick or injured after 3 days, we backfill with someone into that community.
Okay, how about during the 3 days?
During the 3 days, we would cover it by headquarters people. Whoever was available, first available, would get the run.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess the services we know would probably change some, because I think that our police department does provide things like vacation checks.
We do that.
And lockout service.
We do not do lockouts right at this particular point. We used to do a couple years ago until we learned that was eating up about 10% of our time with lockouts. We currently do lockouts for emergencies. Dogs in cars, children in cars, car running in front of United Dairy Farmers that could jump into gear. What we call emergency situations. That is defined by the field supervisor working. And frankly, they're pretty broad about what they do them for. But if you call in and say, I've locked my keys in my car, at Kroger's, for an example, and it's not in the emergency zone, you're probably going to call someone to come out and unlock it. Because it just got to be an issue where they were just running us and running us and running us.
Vacation checks is
Vacation
something.
checks we do a senior visitation program. We have an SRT team, a dive team. We have canines. We do just about anything that you can think of, other than we do not ride bicycles around too much. My guys aren't real big on bicycles because you go from one community to the next. It gets to be a pretty good pedal, so usually they don't much care for the bicycle routine. We offer a lot of different programs like that. In some of the communities, we're going to do an event in Moscow. Community events, they call us. If you've been doing them, we certainly put in there and do what you need to do. We cooperate with community events at every level, and at any time that we are available to do so.
That was my final question, was the community events. That's what I have right now.
Mayor, I've got a question. We've got a lot of good employees here, and as far as they go, would they have the opportunity to put in to come work with the sheriff's department? Or are you guys fully staffed right now?
No, we do not, and frankly, we have a very, at this particular point, we're taking applications. We do not have a number of applications to fill these positions. We do not. So yes, we would take applications. We would put them through the same processes we put everyone else. And we feel it's a pretty good system. It's been checked off by a lot of different attorneys over the years, and it's a multi-stage type of process that just does not take in one's ability to read and write. We do a lot of home checks. We do a lot of talking with references. We do a lot of file checks, personnel checks, and absolutely they can apply and they can go right through our system.
And if I may add something to that, Ms. Abrams can probably appreciate this. I'm not a quantitative type of thinker or person. Maybe that's why I became an attorney. I'm not instead of an engineer or mathematician. We look at the whole person. We don't just give someone a test and someone, say, gets a 90 on the test, and someone else gets a 93, so the 93 automatically gets hired and the 90 doesn't. We're a little bit more, I guess you might say, open-ended and subjective about things rather than completely objective, tied into numbers. But we do recognize, and Rick, the way we do it in our office basically is Rick's, for deputies, for example, sets up an assessment process. It's all in our policies and procedures, and by the way, if you'd like to look at any of those, it's on the, in the computer database. You don't have to get it a hard copy. We can get any of that to you, but he sets up an assessment process. There's an assessment panel. The written part of the assessment is very minimal. It's a lot of, as he indicated, heavy interviewing, check background, family checks, and one thing he is puts as a priority, and I share that with him obviously, is good experience and blemish-free experience, basically. Obviously, if an officer comes to us having had problems with an agency, wherever that might be, they're probably going to be given a hard look, and we might not carry someone's problem into our agency who had problems somewhere else. But we're completely fair, and every officer you have here, I know it'd be important consideration for you and them, would have every opportunity to apply, and if they met our criteria, we would certainly give them a chance.
Okay, thanks.
I have one. When these deputies are hired, they will be patrolling, the same deputies will be patrolling this area, so, or this would be their only area to patrol, and so they could get to know the residents and
Absolutely.
the community?
That's a yes and no question. The reason it's a yes and no question is I can't hire, I do not have a repository of deputies to come here, as we just talked about, which means I would have to hire either 4 or 5, depending on what we did. I would have to hire them. Well, I can't hire them and expect them to know all the policy, procedures, and protocols that we use at the sheriff's office in one day. So what I would do is I'd backfill Amelia with some of our senior people for probably a year. The new people would go on the road. We would assess them through a field training program, which runs about 12 to 15 weeks. The assessment would go from there. They would go on field services, get more training, more understanding about our system, how we do business, because in some matters our job is a little bit more complicated with civil issues and warrants and how to understand the jail and all that. And then after about a year, I would rotate them in here. The ones we hired, I would rotate here, and I would do so slowly with the people that are here, and then I'd arbitrate them and migrate them back to headquarters. So yes, after about a year, unless we had someone that really was coming along very well, like someone that was working here that didn't need a whole lot of orientation, field services, computers, and all that business that we have, then that might be a little less, but I foresee it, and I don't want to, quote things that I can't do. Probably it's going to be a year. It takes a year before the light comes on over there usually.
And if I could add something to that, ma'am. Rick, when he selects people, he's had, how many years back? 30 years in law enforcement.
How about 36?
36 years. He's been a police chief himself in a village pretty much like this village, about the same size, roughly, village of Glendale. 7 years he was over there, lieutenant in the Milford Police Department several years. He started out here as a deputy sheriff in the 70s, and now he's been chief deputy for 15 years. So he has a good eye for things. And he, with these other contracts we've had in other places, makes an effort, and it has worked extremely well. And again, you can talk to the township trustees in assigning people to the various townships that fit that community. There are some deputies who have different strengths and weaknesses, or they have different orientations. Rick is very good at matching those deputies, and you would be allowed to participate in that process, not every step of the way, because you wouldn't want to be involved in that, but he will communicate with you about who he has in mind. You're welcome to interview them down here. When he has his finalists set up, that happens. Look at their background, their resume, any questions you have. Be an open line of communication. You wouldn't be just, here's 5 deputies, take them or leave them. It's nothing like that. And again, he would try to pick those who would fit what you need and what you want down here, because that's important, because every community is different. We recognize that.
Thank you.
Yes. If the council decided to go to the sheriff's department, I would back it to the hill. However, my primary concern for myself and the villagers is to maintain the Amelia Police Department one way or another. Now, I'm sure you realize we haven't had enough time under the circumstances to evaluate our new quote, quote, police chief and our new quote, quote, financial officer. They're sort of one and the same. One keeps the other one happy. But they really haven't had a chance yet, in my opinion, to get down to it. Our police chief's done an amazing job in the short period of time he's had with his report that he's put in on our desks here tonight. And our financial officer is treading water way above his nose. So we should be in pretty good shape over a reasonable length of time to study our own interior operation for what we have to do to maintain a police department. And I think the sheriff's department is the greatest thing that ever came down the pipe. And going ahead with that, I would recommend, if we had to, that we would go to a 5-man patrol instead of 4. That way we got complete coverage. However, I haven't got to that point yet until we give our own little, quote, quote, private police department a chance to show themselves or show to us that it's a total loss. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from as far as our own private police
Oh,
department.
absolutely. Well, no rush here.
I'd like to kind of say something about that. First of all, I'm not here to put Amelia out of business.
Right.
When I got there 15 years ago, we had a lot of people ask us for quotes about services, and you're always looking around to trying to figure out who's putting you in a trap, especially here in the game that I'm in. And our prosecutor's office says we're pretty much by mandate of the state, when asked for those kind of information, we need to supply it. I'm not hearing a contentious issue at all. Matter of fact, I hope you keep your police department, because I love all cops and I like to see them all have jobs. But we also have to offer, if you decide to do the opposite, we'll do the very best we can to do the services that we can do here. And I think that I'm not shedding anything lower or higher on either scale. We're all doing the same thing, and we'll do the very best we can to do your job for you, just like I'm sure Amelia will.
I'm sure you would.
Yep.
That's why I have big confidence in going to your department if we see no other way
Absolutely.
out. But I'd like to give it a shot.
Absolutely.
And I might say something too, and your chief's still around. He's not going to like this, but he wants to retire. But I don't think you could do a whole lot better than him. We've worked with your chief when he was down in Bethel, and I've known him for years, and he's
A lot longer than we both care to remember.
Yes. And of course, the fact that he was a Marine, that sort of has a special part in my heart. But if there's a man,
That was good.
if there's a man who can get it done, I think you've got a chief who can do it. And that's just not detracting at all from Chief Stuker. We work very well with him. But
Absolutely.
if John's here and willing to stick around the wall to help you through this, I think you'll be well served. That's my opinion, and I don't usually get in the public forum and say a whole lot, because I've done that before with people, and next week they're in the headlines and it's not so good, but I don't think that'll happen with John.
Well, that's the idea of giving him a shot, because we hired him with the idea of being able to do a miracle. And that's basically what it amounts to. So that's the end of my conversation. Should I get up and bow or anything?
No.
We'll do that. I have one question. If we would contract with the county, our cars would be painted like county cars, correct?
My original thought to that is not right away.
Okay.
They are dark, although the sheriff does love black, as you can see. I'm more of a multicolored guy. I mean, I like all kind of different color police stuff. And a quick thought on we made several years ago to BSSA, which sets the standards for the sheriff's markings, uniforms, and all that. I think it would be okay just to take the decals off with the striping and piping on there on a dark colored car, even though it's probably blue, I guess, until you would replace those. There's been a lot of that conversation back and forth. I wouldn't see any need unless they ordered this to by penalty of law, and I don't think there's any penalty to that. To spend money just to paint cars for a couple, 3-4 years, and we have some pretty good equipment, it looks like, from the numbers I've seen, so I probably would not push for that, no.
But it might be phased out eventually, because Ohio, for some reason, and that's not every state, they do have a state law that says all sheriff cars, vehicles, that are operational under the sheriff's office, regardless if they're contract or otherwise, will be marked a certain way. And Rick certainly is going to stretch that and phase them out, but there would be a phase out. And when they're phased out, if there was a car or cars assigned specifically here, as he does with the other townships, and you might see them, there is it would be Amelia on the back of it, or Village of Amelia, or Village of Moscow, as it is.
That was next question.
That they would be marked
Right.
somehow, certainly.
Conservative Village or so.
Yes.
Very good.
We do apply for.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Packer, you have any questions?
I stole all my questions, Eric. We'll give them being last, right?
I have another. I know that you mentioned no hurry. What's your feeling on a drop-dead date that we would have to decide in order to give you the time that you needed to hire your deputies and move forward?
September or so.
It's about a 3 to 4 month process for us to do proper hiring. By the time it's posted, the testing, and there are some testing phases, medical exams, drug screens, and some things obviously are required. If another person helps Rick with that, and we have a chief administrative officer. He's not a deputy, but he helps oversee that. And he usually says, don't squeeze me any more than 90 days. He could probably get it done in 90 days, but 3 to 4 months would be optimal. We could certainly get it done in that time.
We certainly want to breakneck speed to
Sure.
do the right thing, so the more time the better. And usually the sheriff's pretty much right. 90 days we can move it through, but any more advanced time would be better. But we can
Okay. Well, I think we're all of the same feeling that Bob has. We have our new chief. He's laid out a plan here in front of us. We like what we see. We definitely want to give him a chance to see if he can bring the police department in budget and do a turnaround that we're looking to all of his experience that he has to help turn our department around.
Well, we wish you well with that.
Thank you.
And him as well, and all your officers. You've got some good people.
But we also have a good alternative, too. So.
Well, yes, and then there's, unfortunately, the complication of the economy today, which puts another wrench in the entire works.
Right.
I have another question. It's a hypothetical question, almost. But we're bumping against being a city, which is no fault of ours. And if we would become a city and we had contract to you, does that change anything, any way, shape, or form? Because I know there's different rules for cities than there are villages, but do you have any say so to that?
For reading the law, I don't see any changes in it. Certainly your attorney would probably mull around the books a couple of hours to figure it out, but I don't know of any kind of issue that would complicate that particular status change.
Me either. I don't see anything, but certainly that would be something that, if, as part of this process, we could actually ask. If you're close to becoming a city, or your law director could look into that, because I don't offhand know of any problems, but I don't know of any contracts personally, and certainly none in this county, that we are contracting with
Right.
cities. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we're at the end now. The attorney, does she have any questions? That's my last one always. If you ask the attorney what kind of questions they
The
have.
attorney should remain silent if possible.
And that's hard for attorneys to do. I'm married to one, so I can say that.
I think Kevin has something in mind.
In response to Councilman Pollock's question about 28, 29 years ago, Coshocton City in Coshocton County shut down their police department, and the sheriff up there took over all the duties. I don't know whether Coshocton has got their own police department again or not. That was the state auditor, and that was the only place that did it, and the state auditor said, so what, you can contract however you want.
Well, Stockton's also got the home of the big basket. What's the big basket? It's the women.
Whataburger.
Okay. Anybody been there lately for a party? You see any cars? What color they are?
Any other questions for council? Only thing that I would add is in the two occasions that I had to meet with Chief Deputy Combs, I was very vocal about the fact that I'm an advocate for having our own police department. Unfortunately, circumstances have brought us to a place where, at least I believe, it's our obligation to look at every option, look at the most efficient ways to do so. I remain steadfast in my commitment to maintain our own police department. But I think we, as a governing body, would be not fulfilling our obligation to not explore every possibility. So with that, I think, Chief Deputy and Sheriff, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you again, and if you have any questions, let me give you a couple numbers. Rick won't like this, but give me my right hand.
Let me tell you what he does when he goes places. He carries my business card. And he said, well, if you have any questions, call me. And he hands the card.
That's not entirely true, but there is something. My secretary's number, and her name is Mary Gregory. That's the direct line to me, because if you just call the sheriff's office number, again, because of staffing and economy, you will get a recorded message. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that. And by the time you get through the menu, you want to slam the phone down. I mean, I do when I call in, but that became a necessity. So my secretary's direct line is 732-7405. That is, that goes right into her, and all you need to say is, I'm a citizen, I was at Amelia's meeting, I'm a member of council, I'd like to talk to the sheriff. Any further questions, I'll be glad to get back to you as soon as possible. And Rick, do you want to give them the number that's best to get a hold of you?
7512, 732-7512.
Before we move down to the agenda, either one of you have anything else you want to add for now?
Just thank you for being here, and anything else you need, just give us a holler. And I sincerely do hope things work out the way you want them to.
I know you do. I know you do. Thank you for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move down through the agenda and ask Chief Wallace. Chief, would you mind stepping up here towards the front?
Yeah, thanks.
I'd like to, for those of you who are here for the first time, and perhaps meeting our new interim police chief, Chief John Wallace, here this evening. Thank you. Chief?
Wish I could have got this out to you all sooner. I'm still kind of massaging and revising it about 12:30, 1 o'clock today. I was gardening last night, finishing off getting the garden plan before the rain. Kept having new things pop up, whatever. So if you don't mind, I threw it out for you since you got something to read, study, take home. I'll kind of run down my notes and explain, and then entertain any questions or comments that you may have. In my opinion, we need to keep the ability of village police department. No ifs, ands, or buts. Solid group of people. We've gone through some issues, but that's okay. It's growing pains. It's no different than a family and any other business or something like that. Things happen, we move on. Certainly there's financial concerns for Amelia, and just as Tim said, there's financial concerns for everybody. Whether you are part of the county, the city of Cincinnati, your own personal family, financial issues are there. They're not going to go away. Folks tell me they're going to get worse depending on how the governor throws out the local government funds and the inheritance tax. So they're going to be here. I'm glad you got Kevin to kind of go through all that, because I depend a lot on him for some of the figures that we've got here in the document and my future planning of figures. The biggest reason I see right now for budget issues in Amelia is that we had in the past year or so 2 officers retired that weren't replaced, and extended administrative leave of an officer, and some extended sick time for an officer. Those vacancies were never filled, and they were tried to fill in these things by the use of overtime, which is terrible. a waste of money when you pay overtime because you're paying more money for what you should be getting for a straight time. So, yeah, we got some issues. We're going to work through them. So what I've done is I kind of spoke to some of y'all. I spoke to some citizens, spoke to the mayor, solicitor, Kevin, some of my other colleagues out in the field, and kind of thought, damn, what did I do several years ago to solve a similar issue down the road? I think one of the things that we need to do here is to revise our scheduling, and in order to make that happen, as you were leading down here, I would like to see a staff of 4 full-time police officers. If you look a few pages back, I think about page 6, you would see a flow chart or a table of organization in color identifying just what exactly we're talking about when I say people. So we're talking about a chief and the amount of money that the chief is being paid, a sergeant that we have retired and what he would be paid, police officers part-time, full-time, and what they would be paid. You'll notice I have $2 amounts or annual fees down there. The second one is their overtime, what the overtime would be if they work. That is for 150 hours worth of overtime. I believe when I was looking at the sheriff's contract, they had estimated overtime within that same proposal that would be part of the funds paid out. And they were guesstimating 150 hours of overtime.
Is that per man?
That's per man. Okay. Kevin was able to retrieve old payroll records and tell me that for the last several years, the average amount of overtime for a Amelia police officer was like 156 hours. So that 150-hour overtime is not too far off of that. So we're pretty much the same. People think we're planning that out. So that's to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking for people-wise. Now you'll notice I've got a sergeant on there. Excuse me. And in my thoughts on paper, I'm saying right now I don't want a sergeant. I just want to have 4 full-time police officers to create that core group for 12-hour release. The reason I don't want a sergeant at this time is because when I came on deck, it was my understanding and everyone else's understanding I was just going to be here for a while. If that changes, well, you know, that's down the road. My focus is now. The new fella who replaces me should have some sort of input in his management/leadership team. So that's why I'm saying, you know, just get the body on the road and let the guy down the road pick his team, just like corporate America, successful companies. So that's why. Now, the neat part about this is this schedule I put out, or the flow, is all the highest paid employees. For example, the sergeant makes more than a police officer. So even though the numbers I've got throughout this thing are all going to be reflecting that sergeant real-world scenario, it's not going to be the 39,000 base. It's going to be the 34,000 base. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in that, a little bit of a cost savings. So we've got that. Within this other paragraph down, you'll notice that I am on there as the police chief, and so is the police clerk / mayor's court clerk. They're there because I was trying to present to you a total allocation of wages that would come out of my police allocation. I would come out of those funds. She would come out of those funds. Part of her salary would be paid for by mayor's court funds. But they're still coming out of that police line. So while they're there, they're really not, well, they're important to this presentation, but they're not, you know, deal breakers. They're just there so we'd say, geez, where that money go? Well, there you know. Okay. We talked about the working sergeant, talked about not selecting one, and then you flip over the page and start talking about my part-time crew. Got a real good part-time crew here currently, but I'm kind of changing the way we do business. Just like any other store, any business, there's only so many hours that a person can be productive for you. If you were running a McDonald's and you had a fellow come in and want to work before, you'd say, oh, fine. I need a guy that can work 4 to 8, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., because that's the dinner rush. That's when we're really busy. And you tell them, man, I got another job, or I got this obligation, I can't do it, but I'll come in and work for you 12 to 4. Well, if I was running the show, I would say, well, I appreciate that, but I can't use you then. I need a guy at 4 to 8. So while I got good fellas out there, some of them have full-time jobs. They can't tell that full-time job, John wants me for part-time work. Yeah, that ain't going to work. So we may have to add an additional part-timer or two. Very minimal cost on that. All I would have to do is buy that fella some uniforms. And he's good to go. Don't have to worry about fringe or anything else. But when we hire that guy, he would be hired under the understanding that these are the hours of availability that we have. If you can't make it, then don't waste our time. You don't waste our time, we won't waste yours. So we're scheduling up now. As a matter of fact, we just did it with the July schedule. We made some radical changes there. And we're up to the point now where there's an Amelia police officer on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, that's how it is now. In reality, he may not always be in town, but he's going to be here working. If he has to take a fellow who's having a mental crisis to mercy, he's going to be gone. But he's going to be right back. He's going to be here to do that job. So while I'm saying he's on duty, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be in town. He's going to be actually doing what he's got to do to get it done. Okay? All right. Next thing I'm talking about is this, or I'll kick back this full-time person I'm looking for. Again, we have an excellent pool of part-time fellows here. And I would like, if we can do that, select from that group. The reason I want to select from that group is because these fellows are known quantities. We know them. We know how they work. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, and we don't have to worry about the old skeleton in the closet. We've already known that, what kind of person this guy is. So we're not going to take a big hit on hiring him 6 months down the road, finding out that there's issues that should have been discovered. Their uniforms. We might have to get them another uniform or so, but that's minimal too. Too many of them damn phones. Okay, so we got that. We don't have to pay that training cost that Rick Holmes is talking about. Remember, he said maybe a year's worth of training before the light bulb comes on. My part-timers here, the light bulb's on. It's burning bright. All we're doing is giving him more hours to work. He knows how we do business. He knows the town. I mean, he's ready to go. And I won't elaborate on that anymore. Why do I want 12-hour shifts? Well, 12-hour shifts is the thing to do right now in law enforcement. Most agencies do it for a variety of reasons. It promotes efficiency. If I do a 12-hour shift, I have 2 shift changes a day instead of 3. Shift change is about an hour's time where people are unloading the car, completing tasks, passing information on, while the other guy is loading the car, beginning tasks, and again exchanging of information. Could take up to an hour to in and out, and it causes a lot of confusion. We're eliminating an hour of that ineffectiveness. Paying a guy money to do that is important, but not as important as paying him to have his wheels turning out on the street. If his wheels ain't turning on the street, we're out of business. So that's what we're trying to do with that. Now, the other thing I like about the 12-hour reliefs is a lot of these guys haven't had a weekend off in, Jesus, a month of Sundays. A long, long time. And that's because with the 8-hour shifts, they're more or less frozen into off days. Where if we did the 12-hour shifts, let's just say they work 7A to 7P, 2 days on, 2 days off, they would be getting every other weekend a 3-day weekend. Of course, they'd have to pay for it. They'd have to work their share of 3-day weekends when they're on the schedule. It's also kind of like giving the guys an unofficial raise. Now, most of the guys here won't notice it much because so many of them live in the village. But if one lived over in Green Township, like my son-in-law, shoot, he was overjoyed when the sheriff went to 12-hour shifts. It was because of the commuting costs. Brooklyn to Batavia and back was, eating him up in gasoline, $4 a gallon. That's, what shocker. Okay, so that's all the good reasons for 12-hour shifts. Now, if you look further back in your schedule, you can see I have constructed for you a sample working schedule right behind my flow chart, I believe. With a whole bunch of A's and B's and E's and F's and other things down at the bottom. That was an example of the month of June. Now, looking at that bad boy, you're probably thinking, damn, what was John drinking, smoking, or both when he came like that? Okay, and I realize that because that's something that, if you're not extremely familiar with it, if you don't work with it, it's hard to decipher. So Linda helped me turn this in on the next page to an actual depiction of what you're going to see out on the street, but day by day. I just couldn't figure out how to condense it down from one sheet, so you got 4 weeks worth of people here. For example, Wednesday, June the 1st, you'll see a lighter blue, then you'll see a darker blue, and you'll see a yellow piece. The yellow indicates the police clerk, mayor's court clerk. Those are all the hours that you could expect to see her here on duty in her office or doing things that she has to do. The lighter blue shows me and my full-time officer what time you should be expecting to see a live body. The darker blue is the part-time officer, who would be that second officer on duty in the village. Again, I remember I keep saying on duty. Scenario could be neither one of them will be here. An example of that then would be, one guy gets a call to a guy having a mental crisis at Lifeline, and he's got to take and transport this fellow to Mercy for psychiatric care. 15 minutes, there's a injury auto crash involving a DUI driver. Well, that officer got to take that DUI to the patrol post for a breathalyzer test. So here, we did our best efforts to have 2 guys working, but circumstances, change. It's like as soon as we step off, our plans change. But the bottom line is we had 2 guys here to do what it was that, needs to be done. And chances of 2 things happening like that, it's going to happen, but not on a regular basis. Okay, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out. Now, as you go through this, you'll see the same thing consistently of each day of that June schedule all the way to the end. I didn't realize June was such a long month, to be honest with you. Good Lord, if June drug on from you this week. Okay. Now, the next page, after we finish that, and let me know if I'm going too fast for you. I have, again, the positions only for the month of June. Now, these numbers are different than the scales up in the front. This scale is the actual money I would have to pay these guys for working that actual schedule here in June, barring any overtime or training or other issues like that. This is just what it would cost me to pay them during regular working hours for June. Now, I've got the month of June penciled out, penned out, and then I've got the annual salary. The annual salary is a snapshot for you to consider as to what is this guy going to cost me for a year's worth of work. Now, what I did is I took that snapshot of June, and in my little world, I said June is like every other month. It's not going to be February with 28 days. It's not going to be a 31-day month or anything like that. Everybody's going to be the same as June, so I just simply multiplied June's money by 12 and ended up with an estimate for a year for that. Now, the interesting thing is that these actual just base wage numbers are actually less than the base wages plus 150 hours of overtime. So that's why they're going to look a little bit lower for you. Okay. Now, one of the problems that we kind of deal with here a little bit is end of shift overtime, and that's where that second officer comes in, the part-time officer, when we start talking 2 officers on duty at all times. Let's say, for example, the schedule itself shows shift change being at 07 and at 1900, 7:87 The part-time or the other officer, we're not going to have his hours starting at the same time. He may start at, say, 5 p.m. for lack of just throwing times out. So when he starts coming in, he's loading up, he's getting ready to go. The other guy who's been working that 12-hour shift, he's starting to get into the wind-down mode. He is picking up his last-minute detail. He's finishing up his reports, his daily activity log, coming in to start his little shift change. And here comes a call. But the other car picks it up. There is no end over shift overtime. Because that other car is going to be picking up that call, running with it, unless naturally it's a big serious call, multiple shots being fired, airplanes coming down, the rockets are inboard, something like that. But generally speaking, like I say, that's the way I envision this to work. Okay. Have I got you all totally confused yet? No. Okay. Damn. You said I could. Oh, I am. Okay. So, I'll let Kevin address a little bit more of the numbers, but like I said at the beginning of this, he'd be in there, I'd be in there, I'd run in there and get something. Kevin would come in there and give me something back, and we were kind of like running back and forth, trying to get some good solid numbers for it. And that's what I feel they are, good and solid, something for us to at least plan from. Now, the one thing we just got today, and I haven't really had a chance to digest it, is my year-to-date expenditures. I'm still seeing things come in from in the beginning of the year, so I'm not sure how that's affected the bottom line. For example, I got a bill from Lloyd Taylor's for a body armor for a guy. Somehow along the line, it fell through paperwork tax, so what I thought would have been paid for months ago, I'm paying for it today. Legitimate bill. It just fell through the cracks. Now that I'm here, we have to watch that a little bit closer. So we've got X number of dollars to spend for the year. I'm not really sure what we got. I got a feeling for it, but let's go back to the schedule. I want 2 guys on the shift at all times. If my money is not going to hold out to the end of the year, I may have to drop that down a tad. For example, the deadest time in law enforcement is from like 3 in the morning till 7, 8. Everybody that's been out is home. Everybody that's home is not going to be getting up for work yet. So we got a quiet period of time. We would probably reduce that down to 1 car on duty at all times, just to get that budget equaled out. We may have to delay a car repair until we get this money squared away. We might have to delay the purchase of or a chair or some paper or a piece of equipment until we get this money squared away. But once we get a handle on it, we'll know exactly where we're at, how much we have to allocate per month until the end of the year. And that's just going to be a matter of massaging those numbers. Okay. So that we're in a good shape with that. We talked about the scheduling and such. Now, that's not the only concern I have at this point in time. We're trying to promote some more efficiency and productivity through the way that we do business. I'm comparing how we work here to other places I've worked, some of the changes we made in other places, and we're going to start slowly working them in here. Too much change is bad or confuse folks, but a little bit by little bit by little bit, we're going to have a smoother operation. Some of the things I'm working on are reducing printer cost, trying to get away from It automatically default to a color printer, down to a black and white printer. I've got the printer already. We found one back in the closet. The next step is to figure out how to tie it in to the servers. If we don't tie it into the server, it's still not as efficient as what it could be. We can change defaults and all that, and then to print the color photo for our police reports and such, we've got to go and rechange all that back. Terrible waste of time. So we're going to work on that issue there. Cell phone costs. I saw that and I thought, holy Toledo Batman. That's a lot. So we're going to start examining that. And as I started seeing how the police department's using cell phones, I'm looking at our radios and I'm saying, what? It's simply a programming thing. If we can, if I can get that together, get the communication plan going, I can, in essence, get rid of the cell phones and say 4 of the police cars get a decent cell phone that we can get a data plan, which will bring out a thing called OLEG to the field. OLEG is the Ohio Law Enforcement Gateway. That's it. I knew I didn't. I had it for some reason. Anyway, this thing here is really neat. We deal with a lot of folks. Union Township has the same issues we have. Guy gets up and he says, "Hey, let me see your ID." "Oh, I don't have none." I go, "Well, what's your name?" "I'm Billy Bob." "Okay." And you're thinking, "Hey, it's Billy Bob, Mom." So, Billy Bob, ha ha. Okay. So we punch in Billy Bob, and through the Ohio OLEG Gateway, and it pops up Billy Bob's picture. That ain't Billy Bob. He's lying. So he said, "What's your real name?" Gets it up, punches it in once. Right now, Union Township, they have to actually send a car to their PD, pick up a picture, and respond back to the scene to do that. Same thing that we can do with that little thing in the paper, or that little cell phone. A lot more efficiency within that operation. Minimal costs. Okay. Radio, we kind of talked about that. The radios, they're good radios. Sure, they're getting old. They still work good. Simply a programming issue. Once we got that squared away, it would work fine. Now, when I harp on the radio issues, I was out in front of Fawcett's with Officer Merle. We had a traffic crash with injuries. I was directing traffic while he actually worked the crash scene. We were within about maybe 200 feet of each other, and we could not communicate. I could not flip my radio over and go to, say, a channel 2 and say, "Hey, Toby, I'm sending cars your way." You know, so if we get that issue, then we can actually get rid of the cell phone. That channel 2 or off the main line, probably 2 to 3 mile range easily that we could save a lot of internal communications costs. Looked at the cars out there, and I noticed our radar units only have a forward-looking antenna. And I'm thinking, why? The radars have 2 ports, forward-looking and rear-looking. I mean, we could get an antenna, a relatively inexpensive antenna, made by the same company, put it on there, and we just double the capacity of that radar. So we could have a guy sitting there and actually controlling speed from cars coming at him and cars coming up behind him. He's just switching the thing. So we're actually killing 2 birds with one patrol car in the area. Another thing I'm looking at is how we store our records and some of our evidence. I found that we got storage buildings out there I didn't realize. So we've got storage, we're paying rent. I think, damn, I can take that rent. I could get us a doggone nice barn if I had room in back. And we could actually store old records we're required to keep, and bulky evidence that we're required to keep for an extended period of time, especially with House Bill 77, with all the different requirements now for DNA type evidence. So we're looking at that. Kind of kicking around the idea with the guys and gals about that old junk car we got back here. Come to find out, that old junk car, which they termed a parts car, not really that junky of a car. And they're saying parts car, but last time I had work done, parts on old Crown Vics don't change well with new Crown Vics. So parts car is pretty much useless. try and get some feedback as to, hey, let's get rid of one of the cars, reduce the trash in the lot, cut our insurance, cut our maintenance, and have us a pretty decent car. So that's a work in progress there. We're also looking at the way we do paperwork in here, although I haven't really got a whole lot into how we're going to have the paperwork flow as it comes in that back door that ultimately ends up with Linda up front. We haven't had a chance to plot that out on the billboard. Okay. So those are some of the other things we're working on other than people. And once we resolve the people issue, I think we can get some more solid answers for all these other little efficiency, things like that. Okay. Now, here comes all the different what if things. Okay, if we eliminated the police department or started contracting with the sheriff, that would also be the mayor's work together, and the police clerk. So I'm kind of wondering now, how would our day-to-day operations go with Julie? She'd be here all by herself. I mean, how does she take a bathroom break, lunch break? How she'd get a day off? What happens if she's sick? Okay, there's no redundancy in that plan. She's not here, Village of Amelia grinds to a halt. So we got to kind of ponder that. So now I'm starting to think to myself, we're not just talking about the police department now. Whatever happens to one thing, spread and goes out into other areas, and it affects it to a certain degree. Okay. Somebody already asked a little bit about the contract with Union Township. I have not had the opportunity to look at or read that, but I don't know how that contract is, and I don't know if you recall. But, my question will be, if we no longer use that, are we still obligated to pay those fees to them? So we may be paying UT Comm Center for services we don't use, if that makes sense to you all. I'm also thinking, if we did dissolve the PD, I know there's fellas here that have accumulated vacation time and sick leave. Are we prepared to pay that out? I'm thinking if we close down and pay them those things, well, we're laying them off. And while I'm not an expert in any stretch of the imagination, I know of other places where a guy was laid off and he becomes eligible for, 26 weeks of unemployment insurance, which is, I guess, back-billed or something to the village, somewhere along the line there. So I'm throwing these out as something to consider. I have not done the research on them due to the lack of time. Okay. Now, I'll say it again, Sheriff's Office, hell of a good guys. Hell of a good. I've worked with them, and like I said, known many of them for longer than I can remember. Super bunch of people. They're going to give you a good shot at that service. There's no doubt. The only thing I'm starting to wonder, or started to wonder when I started this, is if there's no money to pay Amelia Police Department, how we don't pay for the sheriff's contract. And if we did pay for the sheriff's contract, what happens 3 years from now when we decide to, it's a good try, maybe not, but let's start it up again. The startup cost would be astronomical. I mean, we'd be starting from ground zero. People, equipment, office space, the whole thing. Huge chunks, just more than I could even imagine there. But let's say we do go with the sheriff and we do that in the police department. My workload just skyrocketed because now I've got all this evidence that needs to be maintained and transferred. We've got all the police reports that are public record that have to be transferred. We've got all the court records that have to be transferred. And they're all going to have to be audited in that. So we're looking at no matter which way we go, like I said before when I first came on board, no matter which way we go, I'm going to be a working fool for quite a while. That's why I'm saying direction is important. Okay. But you guys glad I ran out of garden? Because when I run out of garden, I ran out of that diatribe. Okay, now The last thing I'm going to mention to you is another thing. I was talking just wages, and by wages of what I'm going to put in the guy's pocket at the end of his 2-week pay period. That's his cash in his pocket. Kevin did me the favor of putting down all the little nitpicky things of what we pay for each employee. For example, Medicare, police and fire pension, workers' comp, health plan. And when he did that, I asked him to please do it on the heavy side, worst case scenario. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, the worst case scenario. That way, when it comes down under what I'm saying it's probably going to be, yeah, I'll look like a hero. If I get it low, I look like an ass. So we don't want that. That's juju. Okay. Thank you for listening to my diatribe there. Do y'all have any questions? If you don't have them tonight, call me at home. You can stop by the house. Anything at all, feel free. I'll explain it the best I can.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you, Chief.
How about the others?
Pardon? We'll be happy to open the floor to the, just for questions for the chief at this time. If anybody here in the audience has any questions for Chief Wallace, that'd be a good time to talk.
Ma'am.
So I want to understand that you were saying that you're recommending 4 FTEs with 12 hours. So kind of the same thing. I'm trying to look at apples to apples, sort of like what we talked about the last time we were here, which what the sheriff department is proposing. Because I was kind of calculating what, if I'm correct, and let you know, I'm going to talk to Rick what the average is, and that includes their bennies and does not include some of the other things that they have. It ended up being about, if I understand right, the article in here, if this is correct, but what they're saying, it's around $63,242 per person for 4 people for that contract, because that does not include, I asked Rick, he said that salaries, benefits, has all the bennies, average overtime, and that's why I was trying to figure out what is it, and you're still paying for the police car that we have, the gas, and there is no administration. Yeah, and there's still no administration, and I understand. I'm just trying to look at things. Now, yours is a base pay of 34, you're saying, versus 39. Now, that doesn't include the bennies or anything, and I didn't know what your percentage.
That's just the wages.
I have a spreadsheet available for you that shows that, for example, here, the base salary for chief of police is $42,936. However, in order for the police chief to receive $42,936, costs the village $59,390.
That's his benefits.
That's
and,
the
all
entire benefit
I
package.
call benefit package.
Right, so that's the entire benefit
overhead
package.
and all that. Okay. And so, what is it for on an average? On the average for one of the
For
police
a
officers?
full-time officer here, let me see if I can find
Because
out.
I know you're saying 34 base and versus 39, but that's just the base salary.
Okay, according to the numbers that Kevin has come up with today, the total wages and benefits for a full-time police officer here is $53,087.14. Now, that's no overtime, that's just strictly base.
Okay.
That does include 150 hours.
Oh, it does include, okay, that also.
So that includes that 156 hours or whatever.
I'm trying to save money by using small
Yeah.
paper.
You're saving money, I'm buying new glasses. But no, he's right, up here, he had the 150 hours in.
Is the 4, I want to make sure I understand it, is the 4 including you or is that excluding you?
No, that's excluding.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's excluding you.
What it is, it's 4 guys.
Right,
Each guy is split into an A team and a B team.
right.
Each person on that team working 12 hours out of that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. And then the part-time people, how do they fit in this?
They're the backup car, the next car on patrol.
Okay, so what would their average salary be?
They would be $23,711. Now that's for their 150 hours overtime, which is kind of excessive for them. Since they are part-time, they really don't get the same overtime that full-time guy would get. And if one didn't work, 16 hours a week, his would be less. So theirs is more of a straight hourly type.
And how many part-time people are we talking?
Right now, we have 4.
We have 4.
One guy's on military leave on his way to Afghanistan.
Right. So you really only have 3 now, or you're paid, it's
wait a
being
minute.
paid for?
We have 5 and 4.
5 and 1 on the way, excuse me. And like I said, we may have to add a few more if the current group has obligations that they can't leave their real job to come here and help us out.
Okay. And then I'm just trying to figure out what there are,
I've been trying to figure it out all week. I'm failing miserably.
Well, so what's the total with all your figures? You in it, exclude the, do you have that? I'm just curious, excluding the female police, or the woman that works in the office here. It would be you, the four FTEs,
Yeah.
and your 5 people. I can go home and calculate this, but I just
I was
wondered
going to say, I don't
the total.
have that particular grouping together.
Because that's kind of like your police department
Yeah,
personnel.
for 4, well, the clerk is considered a police department
Okay,
personnel.
but she probably only makes, I would imagine she's only making about 25,000.
No,
Actually,
more than that.
31
31 with
two.
her bennies.
Yeah. Well, no, 31 2-hour with the hour, plus her benefits.
with her benefits, she's at 49,000.
Okay. And that's full-time.
Correct. And she actually wears 2 hats, as the mayor's court clerk and as the police clerk.
That's fine. So half of that is in the police budget then?
I'd say maybe 3/4.
3/4?
And I'm guessing on that. I'm just pulling that out my
That's
head.
fine. That's okay. It gives me an idea when I want to run, because I just want to see what the figures are, just for personnel. Because that's your, personnel is about 85 to 90% of any
Yeah,
budget.
yeah, absolutely.
Based on the rough numbers that I just threw out, 4 officers at 53,000.
Let's say 54, but it's 53.8.
Okay. Well, I did my numbers on 53,000. That's $212,000.
Okay, that's fine.
A chief at $59,000,
Mhm.
and that's those 2 total $271,000. When you add in 49,000 for the clerk, it's $320,000.
And then,
That's my rough numbers here.
right, then you're part-time. You don't
Yeah,
have-
I didn't include part-time.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Okay, I can kind of figure it out.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question I might be able to stumble through? Yes, sir.
I run Grace Mercy Outreach next door across the street. I know the crime rate is high. I know that you challenge a person that's hungry. That's what you got. I got one question.